All right, good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. We are excited to host you today with a very special guest, Nikki Ramirez from HR Answers, who's been a partner of Local First for many years and just a true expert in the space of all things HR. And we thought that we'd bring her on today with a scheduled session to talk the hottest topic out there right now, which is hiring. What is this new normal? What are things you need to consider? And how should you really be structuring your company to make sure you're hiring great people and doing it the right way? So with that, Nikki, I'm going to give it over to you. Thanks so much for being here today.
Okay, thanks, Thomas. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be back, and I'm always grateful for the invitation to share the things that I love, which are all things human resources. And my organization, hranswers.org, is based here in Arizona, and we serve small business leaders who have the intention of building workplaces that their employees love. And so I just feel like the work that Local First does in the community aligns really well with the way that we love to support people. And so it's always, like I said, always a pleasure to be invited. Glad to be here and really excited to talk about this super hot topic in HR, in small business, in our community right now, which is hiring in 2021. And, the idea that we're kind of in the new normal has settled in, and the thought that we're going to return to how things were, I'm not so sure what that looks like or when it will happen. So really getting comfortable with this idea of new normal, it feels right at this time. It's springtime, it's a time for seasons changing and things like that. And of course, here in Arizona, we're looking at our temperatures in the summer range right now. I'm not sure what that's about, but springtime is a good time to reassess how we are doing things, including hiring. So for those of you that are here live with us today, I did want to invite you to feel free to share, if you would like, in the question panel. If you have any particular question that you brought with you today. And I know we have probably a small group in our live session. And for those of you that are going to watch the recording at some time, I do have an invitation for everyone at the end. So if there's a burning question that you have about hiring that we don't get to today, or you're watching the recording and couldn't ask live, feel free to take me up on that invitation at the end. But do feel free to drop a note, and maybe Thomas, you can help me if anything comes in, just so I don't miss anything. But if there's a top hiring question that's on your mind, what is it? And when we get to the end, if I haven't covered everything, then we'll make sure to plug that in too. But for the purpose of our agenda, what we'll cover today, so just a little tiny bit of background, I have to make a confession. So as an HR practitioner, of course, we have agendas and we have forms, and I'm going to refer to policies and procedures and things like that. But I also have been an adjunct faculty member for community college courses on HR and hiring and management. So you have some homework too. So look out for some action items as we go through today, because I really want to help you leave this session. We really want you to leave with some actionable items, some ideas on things that you can do today to impact your hiring practices for this year, which of course will carry your success forward through the year. So our plan today, I am going to start out with some current statistics and trends. I think it's important to anchor ourselves with what is happening in the larger community. What are people saying about hiring? What are candidates saying about looking for jobs? Then we're going to talk briefly about some of the benefits of great hiring practices, and then move into talking about recruitment strategy, pre-screening activities. How do we make sure that we connect with people and we really explore their abilities, their attitudes, their professional characteristics in a way that helps us to build our team in a way that grows our business. We'll talk about interviews and touring candidates around to gather more information about them and allow them a chance to talk to you about the organization and ask their good questions. We will talk about rating candidates as well. So if you have a few good candidates, which hopefully you fill your pipeline with wonderful candidates for every open position. If you have multiple folks that you're considering for the same role, we're going to talk about how to rate and compare candidates as well. And then I want you to leave with a good idea of how to make an attractive offer for employment. And last but not least, maybe last but almost doubling A1 importance, how do we make a positive first impression and help people feel like they belong in our organization during onboarding? So hiring, recruiting, interviewing, making that offer, and onboarding. All right. So as we kind of get going here and we think about again, trends, what's happening out in the world, you probably can look around and see that it's the hot topic for small business owners right now. How do I recruit and hire great employees? For my part, as an HR consultant, I almost can't stop speaking there though, because I want to talk about retention too. And so we're going to talk a little bit, I'm going to weave into this conversation some thoughts on how your hiring and recruiting practices lead to excellent retention. So let's talk, we'll get to that too. I just feel like we can't take them apart. But recruiting is reported right now as employers' greatest concern. And this information comes from the Society for HR Management in a recent spring survey. Top challenge is recruiting great employees. Number 2 and number 3 in the priority order, workforce planning. So figuring out what to do next, what positions to create, how to restructure my departments, how to best use the people that we have, a close number 2. And then of course, workplace health and safety is a number 3 top concern for employers. So recruiting at the top doesn't, it's not a surprise, right? We have a lot going on in our economies. We have a lot going on in our homes. And employees and business owners are making changes in real time right now to their lives and their businesses in response to things that are happening in our communities, in our children's schools, in our homes, and in response to the economy, changing regulations and rules and recommendations and things like that. So we're still trying to ebb and flow. But overall, when we look ahead, it looks like about 50% of businesses anticipate adding jobs this year. And before Thomas and I got started, we were chatting about our own organizations, and I was happy to report that we just hired a new senior HR consultant on our team. And Thomas mentioned that they have several open positions with the Local First Arizona team. So there's some exciting growth happening in businesses that hit close to home. And we know that folks that have had to lay people off or furlough employees during the last year are looking at ways to bring folks back. This has been a large part of the work and the strategy conversations that I've had with a lot of business owners and clients over the last about 3 to 4 months, especially. I'm ready to bring some people back. How do I decide who to bring back? How do I rehire them if I laid them off? So whether they're new positions, and so folks are anticipating adding jobs, or adding jobs means returning people to work who were not able to work during the height of the pandemic. One way or another, we've got 50% of businesses adding more positions. Some of the things that employers need to be thinking about when we are hiring for these positions is the need to address skills gaps. So folks are coming to work in new industries many times. I just worked with a client who hired a general manager from a 4-location restaurant chain to manage her shipping and inventory warehouse for her online business. And so it was really neat to explore the candidates. She lives in a small town, so her candidate pool was a little bit limited. There was a skill gap that we identified during the process, but the individual's overall skills and abilities were excellent. So we were able to look at, through the recruitment process, how this new employee candidate might learn and fill that gap in order to fill this role that was super important in her business. And happy to report that he's been on for several weeks now and is doing really well. So through the recruitment and screening process, we were able to identify skill gap, but also sort of mitigate that or prepare for filling in the gap. Another thing to be aware of is that top candidates are still getting multiple offers. And so we have to move quickly when we have a good candidate in front of us. We can't sleep on it. We got to stay in contact and we got to make decisions that are timely. And I would never recommend that they're hasty or quick, but that they're timely. So a note of caution here too. So that was kind of the employer report side. What about employees? What are workers saying? Well, the American Staffing Association did a recent survey that indicated that 80% of their respondents said that they would be looking for a new job this year. And that one just kind of blew my mind. And that's where the big caution symbol comes from. So not only do we need to deal with the fact that we have positions that we're potentially adding or returning to our businesses, but we also have to consider that employees are looking for change and they are looking for something new. So, as a follow-up topic, maybe later down the road, we'll talk about how do we focus on retention? How do we keep people feeling fresh and excited and involved and engaged in their jobs? But knowing that this many respondents in a single survey replied that they would be seeking a new role, I think we should put it at the top of our list that recruiting and retaining top talent is going to continue to be tough, but we can do tough things, and I'm going to give you some tools to work with today. So let's keep tabs on our current people too by having honest and frank and candid conversations about how they're feeling at work and what's satisfying and what's challenging. So for me, after reading the data, I was like, man, why do these people all want to leave, right? And so we need some tools to address that. And so a friend of mine who is an editor and writer for the SHRM magazine, the Society for HR Management magazine, Roy Maurer, he wrote an article recently and said that folks that are reporting that they want to move on from their current job are doing so because they might be feeling disengaged or burnt out, and then also looking for a promotion or a raise or a change of scenery. And so we're going to, like I said, we're going to address some of those things. But this, in the HR community, I'll share with you, we're using a term called the turnover tsunami. So people are going to be leaving organizations in mass when it's appropriate for them. And so we have to address that with great recruiting practices. So it's coming. Let's be on the lookout. Let's not be scared of it when it happens, but let's get our toolbox ready. Let's think about some of the benefits of effective hiring practices too. I like to anchor ourselves to those before we jump into these strategies, because it's the value proposition, right? If you invest your time and effort and resources in recruiting and hiring great employees, you want a return on investment, because let's be honest, it can be time consuming and it can be emotionally consuming. There's a lot of high energy and there's a risk proposition that happens for business owners and business leaders when we talk about hiring. And so we want to anchor ourselves to some benefits. So if I invest my time and resources in this process, what do I get out of it? Over the years, I have been building this list. So I've been working in human resources and in hiring and recruiting specifically for over 25 years. And that's all been here in Arizona. And it's been a wonderful list to build and a good thing for me to test out too, because people have been saying this for years, right? If you have great hiring practices, these are the things that you will these are the benefits you'll realize in your business, in your organization. Decreased turnover, increased productivity, improved morale, people feeling good about coming to work. When people feel good about coming to work, that looks like higher levels of attendance, lower levels of absenteeism, more productivity increases profits. And then, of course, the HR lady in me thinks about this too all of the time. When we have an effective hiring practice where we know what we can and can't do and should and shouldn't do, we are also controlling for legal risk and liability, because there are rules and regulations that apply to all businesses when it comes to fair and equitable employment. And so we want to think about that too. And so I'll give you some nuggets along the way for that as well. But we won't be too compliance focused. We're going to stay on the fun things we can do to really make a difference. So a couple of more tips and trends here. So we know that people are on the move. We know that businesses are hiring. So what's happening in the world of recruitment and hiring? How is it happening? And what are people doing in order to get the positions out there, find the people, reel them in, and get them on board? So one thing that we know is that most recruitment and hiring activities are still virtual, wherever that's possible. I think one of the things that we've learned through the pandemic is that virtual connection, it does work. I think that we can all agree that we miss being in person with people from time to time, well, or a lot of the time. If you're like me and you're constantly with folks, doing work side by side, to step away from that and be all virtual all the time has been a little bit rough. But we'll get back to it. But virtual hiring is great. I think a video conference over a phone screen will still stay the norm. So we'll be seeing that happening. We still see people submitting resumes and applications electronically rather than dropping them off at a business. So we'll continue to push information, share information virtually, electronically. We know that a multi-step process is best in recruiting and hiring so that we are able to collect a lot of little bits of data about our candidates. So we're going to talk about that too. What's that process look like? But we know that the trend is to do your recruitment and screening in bits and pieces so that you can build a candidate profile that is as complete as possible. Where appropriate, we're going to use technology to expedite the hiring process and the recruitment process. So getting on board with a platform that feels appropriate to you is important, a technology platform. In my business, we use Indeed, and lots of our clients use it too. So when we help with recruitment for our clients, lots of times we're in their Indeed accounts and helping to manage the candidate experience through that technology has been positive. I know there are other ones out there. I've dabbled in ZipRecruiter. I do like posting jobs on LinkedIn as well, but for candidate profile management, something like an Indeed is a good place to be, or maybe you have the ability to build out a recruitment or talent acquisition platform through your payroll company. So look at all the options, but use technology to stay organized and to track your communication with candidates as well. Because as we're going to talk about, being in contact with candidates timely and keeping them engaged in the process is important. And so if you can't remember who you contacted when, because it's maybe just via text message or an email here and there, you might think about using a technology platform that feels right, it feels affordable, it feels accessible to help expedite the process and build a communication rapport with people. When we look at a trend in recruiting too, I really think that it's important to mention this focus on building positive relationships with those who you do not hire, especially. So you're going to select candidates for your new role, but it's really important to remember that your interaction with candidates that you do not hire impacts the way that people view your business. So it is a part of your whole business ecosystem. And the people that are not selected should be able to exit the process feeling respected and dignified. And so let's make sure that we're building out a process whereby we can still connect with and invite people, to connect with us, even if they're not going to be selected for a position. And just to give you like a tiny experience that I had, when I posted the job for our senior HR consultant for HR Answers that I just hired for, I had about 70 really great candidates. Qualified, they met all the minimum expectations, master's degree, HR certification, 10 years of experience or more in HR. They all engaged appropriately in my pre-screening process. So they answered the questions I asked them to answer before coming on to the next part of the process. So step one was some knockout questions, we call it. So we got through that, and I whittled it down to just about 7 or 8 candidates, about 10% of the qualified candidates. And then I communicated further with them. So the folks that were not invited to that next step in the process, I communicated with them privately. And I said, this is not a mass message. I'm Nikki, I'm the owner of the organization. It's been great to hear from you. And I hope that we can stay connected. And I invited them to connect with me on LinkedIn, where I do most of my professional networking, and got lots of invitations to connect through that process. And then the folks that I did work with through phone interview or video interview who were not selected, I sent them a note. And of course, I called them on the phone too, to let them know before I sent the email to confirm that they weren't selected. And I offered them an opportunity to talk about their career. And as just a fellow HR professional, is there anything else I can do to help them with their growth? So if you have the time, I know that everyone doesn't have the time, but it was a commitment that I made in my business. When I decided to hire and I knew I'd put our name and our contact out there, I wanted to build a process that allowed for us to be in touch with people and leave them feeling sincerely cared for, even if they weren't selected. Streamlining your onboarding process is the last piece here. So we know that a trend in recruiting and onboarding is to get it done in a way that is simplified and efficient, and it's often through your payroll company. We have a great local payroll company here in Arizona, which is Journey Payroll, and they have an excellent online onboarding process. And so when I am supporting clients, which several of them use Journey Payroll, they simply get a link sent out to the candidate who's accepted a job, and they boop, 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 they're entering their information. The system is helping them complete their I-9 and E-Verify, which is excellent. And away they go. They're in the system, and it integrates with all sorts of other bells and whistles like retirement programs and benefits. So streamlining that onboarding process makes you look sleek and organized, even if behind the scenes you might be a little bit frazzled getting things going. So those are some of the trends that we see in recruiting and onboarding. And just to make note, I did see Casey's question about resources for bringing in applicants, and we're almost there to that topic. Let me quarterback my slides here. There we go. So the first thing though, before you're ready to post the job, I want you to think about getting prepared. So before you can go out to market with your jobs, you have to know what role you're hiring for and what your strategy is to go about it. So in my let's say like my educational history, my background, I don't know, I love school. I'd be a perpetual student if they paid money for people to go to school. I'm a Sun Devil, went to ASU. I studied Spanish language and I studied business, and I loved my marketing classes. In my MBA, I studied HR management as my area of focus though. But this sort of idea of the 4 Ps in marketing stuck with me. And then I kind of converted it over the years to the 4 Ps in recruiting. So when we get ready to take a job to market, we really have to take it to market as if we were selling a product or a service for our business. So we have to, first of all, get the pay rate. So work with someone on compensation strategy. We provide lots of support for people just looking at research and data on who's paying what and what works for your business. So what's the price? What's the price? What's the pay rate that you're going to pay? And let's not be secretive about it. I do recommend that employers post their pay rates. So if it's an hourly range or a salary range, please post it when you go to market. Because if you don't, you may entertain a great candidate who simply won't accept your offer in the end because they are not going to accept the rate of pay that you are able to pay based on your budget. Have a budget ahead of time, publicize the job with the pay rate, which that's the price. The next part is the product. So get the product right. We're going to talk a little bit about job design and talk about job descriptions in a second, but you have to have an idea of the essential functions, the duties, the reason that the job exists in your business. Sell that job specifically. Be specific about the role, the responsibilities, the skills you need the person to show up with on day one so that they can help support your success and you can help them grow in their career. We'll talk about promotion. So where do we advertise these jobs in the next slide? And then we need to tell people the place that they should come to apply. So is it Indeed? You know, again, this is just my example. I'm not affiliated with Indeed in any way. It's just a tool that I use. So if I post my job on LinkedIn, I might actually tell people that I'm accepting all resumes through Indeed and to use that link. So I like to filter and funnel people through one location, or maybe they're dropping off a resume or an application at your place of business, at your restaurant or at your retail location. Make sure you're clear about where people should come to apply or how they should get you your application. So price, product, promotion, and place, the 4 Ps of recruiting. Next up, where are job seekers looking to land their next role? So we know that there are a lot of different ways that we can get the jobs out to people so that they know who is hiring. Job seekers and new hires report most often, so number one way that they find their jobs is word of mouth. So in our organization, our team surveys new employees to find out where they found the job, just in case that didn't happen during the hiring process. When our clients bring on new people, we give them a phone call and welcome them and go through a series of new hire survey questions. So we ask them, how did you find out about the job? Was it easy to apply for the job? Is the job what you expected so far? You know, doing some testing out the waters. But most people report still that they find their jobs through word of mouth, and that rings true in the surveys that we're looking at too in the Society for HR Management. Job board websites are number 2, and I'll share with you some of the top ones related to that in a second. Employer websites are next. So people are going to your website or your social media page to find open jobs. So if you haven't built out an online presence as an employer, that's something that might be on your to-do list for 2021. How do you keep current a list of open positions with your company? And how do you start to sort of curate relationships and help people understand what it would be like to work for you? Newspaper ads or online listings like Craigslist are still being used. I also put Facebook in sort of in between job board and newspaper listing. Facebook recruiting is definitely become more popular and effective over the last 2 to 3 years. And specifically for jobs that are entry level, hourly pay, or even the part-time folks too. Lots of activity with those types of jobs in the Facebook world. And then sometimes people know somebody else at their prospective employer's place of business. So my son works in a retail location, and he was just talking with his manager yesterday about the fact that his brother wants a job possibly. So contact with one employee about what jobs are open is another great way. That's also looping back to word of mouth. All right. Top job boards. So where are people clicking and applying? This is what we find. We find that most popular right now is the Indeed platform. Indeed and Glassdoor, another company that started out primarily to provide folks with information about workplace culture. Indeed and Glassdoor are now one company, and that happened a few years ago. Glassdoor started to also offer job posting opportunities. And so they're kind of one in the same. They have their own brand still, but they are the same company. So Indeed is still the top online job board right now. They have a good sort of SEO crawl that happens when you post a job there. It does get out into the world, so it's pretty effective. They do pay-per-click for posting a sponsored ad or a job that you pay to post to the world. You get much better results when you do pay for a job on Indeed. Otherwise, it kind of gets buried in the many thousands of jobs that are open in the area in your industry. So it is important to really consider what kind of investment you're ready to make for hiring. If you do have a budget that you can apply to it, you're going to see a quicker result. ZipRecruiter is also popular. It's out there at number 2. LinkedIn is a great place to find your, especially full-time and supervisory executive level positions. Facebook, again, I already mentioned that one. Snag-a-Job is one that came up recently. So I heard of Snag-a-Job a while ago. There's a really great organization, a nonprofit here in Arizona called Year Up Arizona. And then another great organization that focuses on job skill development education is Junior Achievement of Arizona. And I've volunteered for both. And when talking with the students who are looking for work, they were talking about Snag-a-Job in the last couple of years. So I had to go explore it. And over the last 2 years, it's really become a go-to place for entry-level workers, hourly workers, part-time workers, seasonal folks. They have a nice platform, it's easy to use, and it's fairly cost efficient too. And last one to mention, if you are looking to hire college students, Handshake is a great option for you to check out. So those are some of the job boards that are out there. Some you can use, do paid job postings, others you can do for free. Some you can choose either free or paid, and you definitely see different results if you pay for it. Then of course they put you on the priority list for advertising. So those are some things to think about. If you want to talk more in detail about that, perhaps a future conversation to talk about your strategy is a good idea. Before we move on to, asking, or looking at the final couple of things, what can we do to get the word out? I want us to remember to just stop and take a look around our community and see what type of community-based resources are available that you have access to, that are free, that are effective, and that get you great candidates in the door. So looking around our community, we have a lot of great organizations, nonprofits, agencies that support workers who are in transition. So organizations like Goodwill, Career Connectors, Chicanos por la Causa, they have job skill development and an inroad for business leaders who are looking to recruit great employees. Of course, there are other state and county-based career offices. Arizona at Work is our sort of one stop for Arizona, and so you can always look there for resources for employers to help get the word out about your jobs, and you'll be able to connect quickly with people who are interested in advancing their career and are potentially even already training in areas that you need them to be proficient in when they arrive to work at your business on day one. So last thought here, before I give you your first bit of homework, is that you should ask other people to spread the word. So, when you think about how do I get the word out, how do I find the right people? Like I said, word of mouth was #1 reported strategy for people to find their next job. So do you have an employee referral program and policy? Do you have something for that so that you can reward employees who send you another great employee? We just built out a new employee referral program for a client in the very early part of first quarter here in 2021 and filled all of their open positions in their retail operation through the new referral program. So letting people know that they will be rewarded for referring great employees who make it on the job too. So there are some conditions like the employee has to stay on for a certain period of time, but now that it's the end of the first quarter and those folks have been on and completed their introductory period, those employee referral bonuses are about to get paid out. So it's an exciting time for that program. And then share with your vendors, share with your business connections, share with your network that you're hiring, share in the Local First Facebook page for members, business members that you're hiring, and the word will creep out and people will help you. And perhaps if someone helps you find an excellent candidate, maybe you send them a thank you note or take them, send them a coffee gift card or something like that. So those are some ideas for getting the word out in recruiting. Your first action item here, your first little bit of homework, if you'd like to take it on, is to think about for your currently open positions. So thinking about your jobs that you have open now or a job that's about to be open in the future, who are 3 people that you're going to tell about your open job? Send a personalized message, text, email, phone call, let them know you're hiring and ask them to share. And then thinking about your online presence, where are 2 places you could share your job ad or your link that you're not currently sharing it? So just posting the job on Indeed or Facebook is a good start, but then are you sharing it to your own social media? Are you sharing it in community groups? Are you posting it on your own website? Things like that. So getting the word out, getting folks to fill that pipeline for you is important. Once your pipeline is full, then you need to, be ready to have a great job description to, build your questions off of and start to build your team. So let's talk a little bit about questions. When we are stepping into the process of saying, what do I even ask people during interviews? Well, I do recommend that folks have a structured set of questions to at least anchor you to your interview process. I really love the idea of open conversations and organic conversation during interviews, but we should have a set of questions, 3 or 5 or 7 or so, that we get to with every candidate. The conversation can go naturally where it will, but before you conclude that interview, I want you to look at that sheet and say, Thomas, thank you for your time today in the interview. Let me just look at my list of questions and make sure we've covered everything today. And then you glance down at your paper, collect your thoughts. And if you didn't get a chance to talk to your candidate about something that you need to help them to reveal to you what experience or skills or attributes they have, then you can go back to that question and say, you know what, there's one more thing I'd like to ask you. And then you can go on to ask that question. It's easier to write job interview questions if you have a job description. And that's a process. Again, it's an investment in time and looking at your business and workflows to build out a good job description, but it will long-term benefit you in a lot of ways, not just in the interview process, but when you're leading, managing employees and expectations too. Aside from building out the job description to list out those job duties, skills, attributes that you need on the job as basic requirements, I'd like you to think about envisioning your ideal candidate as well. So building out, painting a picture of the ideal candidate. What skills do they know and do they show up to your business with on day one? What are their abilities? What types of attitudes do they have about work and about your industry and about their ability to impact the community? What types of programs and systems do they already know how to use? What about their education or certification, if that's important to you? Everybody does not need to have a diploma or a degree or a certification in every role. Sometimes experience is absolutely the most important thing. So gauging experience, what level of experience do you want them to have on day one? And a big point of concern and importance is availability at work. And so making sure that during the process of building out that ideal candidate profile, imagine when you need them to work. Does it need to be Monday through Friday? Does it need to be daytime, nighttime, weekends, holidays? Let's get ready to be specific about that during recruitment too. All right, I already mentioned knockout questions once, so let's just take a look here. Knockout questions are questions that, if answered as you would like them to be, answered correctly, let's call it maybe, that the candidate is advanced in your screening process. So if it's important to you that your new employee is able to work nights and weekends, ask that question first in the process to make sure that you don't have to be disappointed when you work with a great candidate, offer them a job, and then you talk about scheduling and you find that they can't work the schedule that you want. Or you maybe weren't so clear about how many hours the job was. It's a 20-hour per week job and they were looking for 30 to 40 hours. So asking questions very early on in the process, they send in their application or their resume, you send them these questions. And if they answer to your liking, let's advance them in the process. Maybe you're talking about minimum experience. Maybe they're a driver for your company and they have to be insurable and have a valid driver's license. That sounds good. Maybe they need a certification like my HR consultant team does. You know, we have to have our HR certifications up and running and current all the time. So if that's something that's important, then definitely put it on your knockout questions. For other things, maybe they can get it once they join you. Maybe you need your employees to have a first aid certification or a food handlers type training validation, a card, right? Food handlers card. And maybe it's okay though if they get it once they join you. Maybe they have 60 days to complete that training or 90 days. So maybe you don't ask it as a knockout question, but you let people know that they'd be required to get it to maintain employment later. So think about some knockout questions. And then I want you to also consider using a few different types of questions throughout the process, whether it's on a phone interview, a video interview, an in-person interview. There are three kinds of questions that I want you to consider. The first one is behavioral questions, and I'm going to give you some samples in 1 second here too. Next is technical questions. So telling me how you would do the work or showing me, depending on what type of work you're doing. Maybe you're in a trades type industry and you actually want an employee or a candidate for a job to show you how they would actually do something. They would cut a piece of stone or tile, or they would organize their tools for the day, or talk to them about what safety steps they would take in certain situations. And then theoretical questions are the what would you do if. So not tell me about a time when, like behavioral is really trying to dig down into someone's memory of when they actually dealt with the scenario you're going to share. Theoretical questions are really being honest that maybe they haven't dealt with that, or what is their best response, right? And maybe we, in behavioral questions, we expose ourselves a little bit. We're a little bit more vulnerable to say, this is how I thought about a situation, a scenario, and dealt with it. Theoretical questions is more like, this is what I know to be the right answer. So you want to test that all out. So a great behavioral question that I want to recommend that you consider is one that is my favorite. Tell me about a time when you made a mistake at work. What happened? What was the result of the mistake? And what did you learn from it? So this question is one that I like to maybe give a little bit of qualifying statement or lead-in statement to help people feel comfortable. So I might say, tell me about a time at work when you made a mistake, and hey, we're all human, we all make mistakes. And then you ask them you pose the question and you also let them know, listen, after you share your mistake with me, I'm going to share a mistake with you that I've made before. And so you're kind of allowing for that rapport to build and letting them know that it's okay to be vulnerable, and that hopefully they'll share a doozy of a mistake that they made so that you can gauge their ability to be accountable and learn. A technical question, this is just a simple one. I recently was helping a client with hiring for a position, and we did not ask about basic technology use in the interview process. And so we just kind of thought that everybody could use all the systems that they were using, I suppose, like Microsoft Outlook was the example. It's a real life example, and discovered when the person joined the team that they really weren't proficient in the use of Microsoft Outlook or Microsoft Suite, and that's what the company used. And so it was really a sticking point. It was really hard because it was a small team and they couldn't actually teach the person how to use it. Then they didn't really have a training budget to send them to class. So it was a little bit of a hiccup. So we built this question out for when they were reassessing and recruiting again. So we said, we use Microsoft Outlook for email and calendars on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 meaning you're unfamiliar with the program, 5 meaning you can teach others how to use it. Tell me how comfortable you are with Outlook, and then tell me how you've used it in previous jobs. So you could ask a technical question about any system, platform, tool, any type of work that the person has to do that's manual. Build out that question, ask them how they've how comfortable they are, give them a scale to use, and then ask them to describe how they've done it in the past as well. Third type of question that I want you to consider using is a theoretical question. So one that we just built into a client, it's a massage therapy practice. So we started to use this question recently. It's been really interesting. So what would you do if you discovered that your client left a poor review of your services online? So we're talking about that. We're talking about ability to deal with criticism and critique, be accountable, be professional. Another one is our supervisors provide feedback and coaching on the job. What would you do if you learned that your supervisor was not 100% pleased with your performance? So that's ability, again, to take criticism, critique, be committed to on-the-job learning, feedback loop, all that kind of stuff. So those are some ideas of questions that might work for you too in your business to help you really, again, collect a bunch of little points of data so you can build your candidate profile. Quick stop for compliance. I wanted to share with you a few questions that you should avoid during the process. So there are non-discrimination, non-harassment rules and regulations that exist in local areas like the city of Phoenix, city of Scottsdale, city of Flagstaff, and at the state level. And then at the national level, we have non-discrimination, non-harassment laws that prohibit employers from discriminating against people in hiring for certain things, like based on age, disability, religion, race, as an example, okay? And so what we want to do during the recruitment process is make sure that we're not dipping into those topics as a part of our recruitment and screening strategy, because we would never want it to look like we only want to hire people who are young and energetic. We want to hire all people that are qualified for a particular position. That's why we have a job description with essential duties. That's why we talk about abilities on the job. We want anybody and everyone who's qualified to feel welcome to apply. We don't want people that have a disability to feel like they're being excluded from the application process or that they wouldn't be considered on the basis of their disability. So these are your questions to avoid. So things like, what's your date of birth? How old are you? If you're doing background screening, it's okay to ask for date of birth, but it only happens after you offer the job. So it would be something like, Thomas, I am so excited to offer you this position today, and I'm offering the position contingent on the completion of a successful background screening. And then he accepts the job, and then I gather his personal details, his birth date, social security number, address, all that kind of good stuff, so I can run a background check. But that happens after the offer. So some other things, just talking about what church do you go to, what's your maiden name, do you have a disability? We have to steer away from that. And there are ways to incorporate questions that will help us to uncover if someone is able, willing, and interested in the job, but we steer away from these questions. All right, so summary of preparing your process and some tips here. Make quick, timely contact with new candidates for your job, always within 3 business days if possible. Incorporate those automated knockout questions if you can. A phone screening is a good first step to talk to people and start to build rapport and ask additional important questions about the job and their ability to do the work. I like a quick message exchange too via email or the message platform in your recruiting system, just to say, hey, just wanted to introduce myself and share a little bit more about the company. Do you have any questions about our company right now? Do you have any questions about the job? Exchange some messages if that's important to you to see how the candidate writes. Not every position requires writing on the job, so don't do that if that's not required on the job. But if you want to know, maybe you're hiring a client care specialist or a customer service rep that'll communicate via email or messaging, you might want to have a message exchange during recruitment too then. A live interview via video or Zoom type video or in person is fine too, as long as you're still being safe. And you might also think about incorporating a practical activity or a realistic job preview. So a realistic job preview is great because then the employee there, the candidate, they're still a candidate, they get to come in and see what it's like in your business while things are running. So you might invite them to your restaurant or your hotel or your retail shop or your office, if there's work happening in person, of course. If not, you can invite them virtually to join a meeting with you or to work on an activity. And what you do during the realistic job preview is not put them to work necessarily. We're not trying to get them to give us free labor because that's not allowed under federal wage and hour laws. What we're trying to do is see if they think they would like it and have more conversation with them about what they think they would like, what they think they would be good at, and if they have any more questions about the job or any concerns about it as well. The other thing you can do is a practical activity. So just again, to give you an example, when I hired our most recent HR consultant, I sent a series of questions or scenarios to them that are common questions that our clients ask us. So what would you do? How would you respond if a client sent you this question? And ask those top candidates, just the top 3, to respond to that practical activity so that I could gauge their thinking and really see how they thought about some important topics in HR. So crafting a practical activity or a realistic job preview is great as well. Action item number 2, what should you take away from or add to your current process? So just thinking about your process, what complement of activities are you engaged in during recruiting so that you can find great candidates and assess them well? Then we move into evaluating our options. So thinking about tips and techniques, make sure you're always prepared before your interview begins. If you have a resume or application, which I hope you do, you review the details before you start that interview with your candidate. If you're doing a phone interview, let's make sure that it's not more than 30 minutes max. Make sure it's at a scheduled time, and you limit it to 4 or 5 questions too. We want to, again, have it be a snippet, a building block in the relationship with your candidate. We don't want to overwhelm people at any one interval, and we want to build up to, you know, the most engaging part of the experience, which is maybe a live interview with you or a panel. Maybe you have a coworker that helps you with hiring. So moving through the process, let's keep those phone interviews short. We already talked about not winging it. I already sort of wove that into the interview questions, but let's make sure that we prepare them ahead of time, that you have a good way to note your the candidate's answers. That's important too. So have a blank sheet of paper ready and just let people know that you're going to write down their answers so that they don't feel nervous. So I might say something like, okay, Casey, I'm really excited to talk to you today. I have some questions prepared. I'm sure we'll have a great conversation. And just to let you know, I'm going to take some notes. I don't want you to be nervous about what I'm writing down. I just don't want to forget what you're telling me. And then away you go. So information you need from the candidate first and foremost so that you can evaluate them. Let's make a list of that. So your action item number 3, make a list of the things you need to gather. Application, resume, do you have a skill test? Do you have knockout questions? Do you have to do verification of education, certification, or training? You got to build up that candidate profile. So what do you need to get from candidates before you interview them, or even at least before you make your decision? So when we're ready to make the decision, we have to get organized and we have to confirm some information and be able to lay our data, you know, side by side for our candidates. So I want you to take all the information you've gathered, review the candidate's profile that you've built over time based on your interactions. Don't be afraid to go back and do follow-up questions too. I've had the experience where we've had, you know, great conversation with someone, and then maybe we start to think about something they said, and so we wonder, would they be a good fit because they did mention something about their schedule? Well, let me go back and ask. And when you call that candidate or you send them a message, just let them know, hey, I was thinking about something. I just want to be clear before, you know, we make any decisions or move forward. Can you answer this question for me? So always feel okay about going and asking follow-up questions. I really do, recommend that folks verify past employment. We want to know that people left their jobs, in a fairly positive way, and I say that with hesitation because I know sometimes a bad job experience is not even the employee's fault. Sometimes it's the leader's fault. Sometimes it's the boss's fault. But at least verify that they worked where they said they worked, when they said they worked there, if possible, just to, again, build credibility in the process. Do speak with references if they have them available, and if that's appropriate for your level of work that you're hiring. You know, even when we work with entry-level employees, it's okay to talk to a teacher, someone that supervised their volunteer work, just to do a character reference. And then, of course, we talked about background checks, if you have to verify credentials, things like that, so that you can rate your candidates against your ideal candidate profile, which we talked about way back when. In the beginning of the hour, we talked about building a job description and an ideal candidate profile. So on their own, with all the information that you've now gathered, how closely do they meet your expectations as the ideal candidate? And how well do they compare to one another? And then the last question you want to ask yourself is, what job skills am I willing to train them to? So maybe someone rated themselves as not excellent with Excel, and you need them to use Excel, but it's not a deal breaker today. Maybe you're willing to train them or send them to a class or something like that. And their ability to deal with stressful situations based on your interview process and your activities is just so much higher than the other person who can do Excel work, that you decide that those other abilities are more important than Excel. Choose the candidate that you think is best based on what you can train them to and what you need on day one. Communicating your offer is an important part of the process too. I do suggest that folks call the top candidate and make a verbal offer before you send your offer letter, just to confirm information, including your salary or your rate of pay. So you're thanking them for their time in the interview and screening process. You're talking to them today because you're excited to offer them a position, and you're going to tell them it's full-time or part-time, the job title, and reaffirm your company name so they know who they're talking to. Tell them what the starting rate of pay is. If you have paid sick leave, which in Arizona, we have to offer all of our employees paid sick leave, full-time, part-time employees included. You can tell them about your paid sick leave or your vacation policy, things like that, and then offer a projected start date if they accept your offer. When you do move on, then, once they say, yes, I'm excited to join your team, yes, thank you so much, let's do this, then you can send them a letter to formalize the offer, and that includes information about your company, your legal name, your DBA, your location, the name of the supervisor that they'll be working with, the job title they'll have, whether they're exempt or non-exempt, are they on an employment contract, or are they an at-will employee, what's their pay rate, start date, some benefits info, and then any important details about onboarding, like should they bring documents to prepare and complete their I-9 on their first day of employment. Let's mention that in the offer letter. And putting together great offer letters is something that we help our clients with all the time. And there's not really magic to it, but it makes such a difference when you have a great offer letter in being organized. And again, just sort of showing up as your best self as a leader and employer, getting the right details to this candidate so they can have an excellent experience. So action item 4, make an attractive offer. What's the one thing that you can do to create a better offer process? Just think about that. Maybe it is making sure to confirm details on a phone call before you send the letter. Maybe you're not sending any letter, you're just having people show up. So let's build out that process for you. So try to build a great process that, again, is comprehensive, and it puts you in a place where you've shared important information and people feel clear about what they're coming on board for. All right, last couple minutes, we're going to talk about trends in onboarding in 2021. So now you've got these open positions. You've built out a strategy for recruiting. You have a great process for interviewing and screening. You know how to make an excellent, attractive offer. And now it's time to bring the person on board, bringing them on. So onboarding, orientation, new employee ramp up, new employee training. He has a lot of names under the umbrella. So within the first 180 days, I really feel like that's the new employee phase in employment. Sometimes people like to think of 30 days, 60, 90 days, but really, I like to say 180 days, we should be really in top care and concern mode for our new employees. And I do break it down into 2 sections. So we'll talk about 0 to 90 days and then 91 to 180. But in the first 180 days, we're caring for people, we're training them, we're in high contact with them, we're coaching them. We want it to be a streamlined process, so at least have a list of things you're going to cover, a plan for onboarding people so that you know what you're going to get them acclimated to, help them learn sort of, I call it the answers to the test, how to be successful on the job. Tell them what they're evaluated on, help them get to know people and build a sense of belonging. So that's kind of number 2. I jumped to number 2. So creating conditions for success is your number 1 objective, or number 2 objective. Number 1, You can also focus on streamlining the technical components of onboarding, which we already talked about that when we said we want to think about getting people maybe a link that they can fill out their demographic information, provide their tax information, and a system where you can deploy things like your employee handbook, a job description, safety precautions and procedures, things like that. So again, like a journey payroll type system allows you to build those out custom for each job in your company. So streamlining the technical components of onboarding, again, makes you look like you really have it together, which is great. And it really does help you keep it together so that you're not chasing your own tail when you're trying to figure out if you're compliant with hiring rules and regulations. So let's think about number 2, creating conditions for success during the 0 to 90-day phase. So a few of the things that I think are important, and there's so much to this, we could definitely spend an entire hour just talking about onboarding and helping people feel like they belong, because we know that has the biggest impact on retention. When employees can answer, yes, I feel like I belong, yes, I have a friend at work, people stay on the job. And so we have to be attentive to that. So 0 to 90 days, make sure that they're getting introduced to as many people as possible in the organization. Make sure you're doing tours of your business, whether it's a physical place, or we just did online home office tours with the client's new employee, where the folks all popped into the Zoom with the new employee and the owner and I over the course of an hour, introduced themselves, and then showed around their home office. It was super fun and a good way to use sort of the current situation, make the best of it. You might also consider assigning an ambassador to work with your new employees. It's not their mentor and it's not their trainer and it's not their boss. The ambassador is someone who loves working at your company and that will speak positively about the experience. Somebody that they can go to and just lean on to learn more about what you do. Sharing and training on day 1 and week 1. What do we need to be doing on day 1 and week 1? Make sure you have a map for that. Don't try to do everything all at once or you'll become overwhelmed, and so will the employee. Don't abandon your new employees after just a week or 2 of training. It does take many times of repeating information for people to feel comfortable with it. So let's remember that. Provide people with opportunities to shadow other employees and continue their on-the-job training through that first 90 days. I hope you're incorporating a new hire survey of some kind during the first 90 days to talk to people about what the experience was like joining your team. And then maybe at the end of 90 days, you're doing a new employee evaluation, a simple one to check in and say, these are the things we expect from you. And this is how we see it going right now. Here are some goals for the next 90 days. And I do hope that you're meeting with your new employees weekly, at least for 15 or 20 minutes, just to have open-ended conversation about how they're doing, what they're feeling good about, what they're feeling like they're building success in, and what they feel like they might be struggling with or resources they need. And then the next 3 months, so months 3, 4, 5, and 6, looking at continuing to build relationships, looking at how are things going with learning the organization? What about extending professional growth and training opportunities beyond that initial training to just get our feet under us? But what can we do now to build out and stretch the employee? Are you doing something fun to celebrate that 6-month anniversary? Maybe there's some sort of mini graduation or celebration, because 6 months is the time when we really feel like we're finally starting to get it in most jobs, or we're starting to think, what did I do? Maybe I need a new opportunity. Some companies give a gift, some swag, an incentive, a bonus, a pay raise at 6 months. You have to think about your compensation strategy, but you might incorporate something like that. And then new hire survey part 2 is really about the experience of being trained and how do I feel as a part of the team. And maybe you're moving to bi-weekly one-on-one. So you're not meeting with them weekly anymore in months 4, 5, and 6. Maybe you're meeting every 2 weeks. So action item number 5, just identify 2 things that you could do to refine your onboarding process and help your employees come up to speed and feel like they belong with your team more quickly, helping them feel like they made the right choice. All right, we're right at the top of the hour. Here's our list of things that we covered, and we covered a lot. And so I know that for anybody out there that has questions, you might be scratching your head like, holy smokes, that's a lot. I'm here for you. We've talked about what you're up against, so some of the stats and the data. I'm encouraging you to get creative with your process, and I've shared a lot of creative process that I use with you today. I do encourage employers, small business leaders to get organized and plan out your process so you can be consistent, because consistency in everything brings success, and that includes recruiting and hiring. Ask great questions, verify your feelings by evaluating your candidates well, make those clear offers, and really onboard with purpose. I want you to feel good about bringing the right people on, and I want them to feel equally as great that they made the right decision to join you. So thank you for letting me speed through hiring in 2021, which I feel like is completely appropriate because we are going at Mach speed right now as it relates to hiring. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Nikki. That was incredible. So much good information and told so well. So thank you for being so thorough. We had one question come through while you were talking in the very beginning. I think you covered it, but maybe if you just want to give a quick synopsis. Someone was just asking, what are the best resources for bringing in applicants? Indeed, Glassdoor, Craigslist, etc. I think Craigslist is kind of old age. I don't think people are really using that anymore, but would you just want to recap that really quickly?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we see, I would say that right now the most popular platform is Indeed, and when you do sponsor a job on Indeed, they definitely give you priority and you get a higher number of candidates. Craigslist is still being used, but I think very tentatively. I see event promoters getting their temporary event staff through Craigslist and things like that. But where the old time Craigslist recruiting moved to is pretty much Facebook. People are using Facebook jobs now to post for their companies. So you use your company profile. That's the recommended way. Use your company profile to post jobs, and then you can communicate with candidates right on Facebook about your jobs. And some people are using Instagram too, same way. So there's definitely an opportunity to move into the social media side rather than like the Craigslist place. Yep.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for everybody for attending today. We have recorded today's session, and we'll make sure that you can get a copy of that if you want to review the information, and can obviously connect you directly to Nikki if you have any questions or would like to connect with her after this. Nikki, thank you so much for your time and expertise on this subject. And hope everybody enjoys the rest of your afternoon. Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Bye, Thomas. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah.